10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane!
There's no need to fear.
I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm black, y'all, and I'm blacker than black, cause I'm black.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Supa Black, an all-black panel podcasting experience where we talk about all things superhero, past, present, and future. From Marvel and DC to anime, there is no stone we will leave unturned as we take a deep dive into the genre of superpowered individuals and the worlds they inhabit. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Zuri Washington. I use she, her pronouns, and you can follow me on IG at Zuri with a fringe on top. That's Zuri with a Z, not Suri with an S. I'll leave it to the rest of today's Supa panel to introduce themselves. Take it away.
Hello, everyone, whoever is listening. My name is Sheridan. My pronouns are she, her. And if you are interested in vegan food cooked by these hands, you can follow me on Instagram at Island Zephyr Cooks. You don't know how to spell Zephyr, it's right there. It's right there. Oh, wait, you can't see this. Don't worry about it.
Hello, everybody. My name is Jason Williams, he, him pronouns, and you can find me on Instagram at Blue Ranger 83.
And don't forget to follow the podcast at Supa Black Podcast on IG, or you can follow us on Twitter at Supa Podcast. But now that we're all assembled, let's get started. So today's topic of conversation is what I call international superheroes. And what I mean by that is kind of, the zeitgeist of superherodom is such an American thing. It's such it's firmly stuck in American culture, and how it has influenced the rest of the world is really fascinating to me. Because the easiest go-to is anime, to see anime and to see things like Dragon Ball Z and to see My Hero Academia and how popular it has been and gotten over the last, I feel like it's been 1,000 years at this point, but from the way that I've been watching it. But yeah, and so that's what I mean by international superheroes. Do any of you watch any anime at all?
Well, I watch it.
I know you do. That was a trick question.
You said international superheroes, and my favorite anything, period, poo, is Sailor Moon. And I will stand by her. I will stand by her until the day I die. Absolutely. Okay. The first, honestly, outside of Storm, but we can talk about Storm for a whole episode.
That's a whole 2 episodes.
That's the whole, that's the whole. I am in a Facebook group. We don't need to talk about it. But outside of Storm, Sailor Moon was my superhero as a kid, they showed it super early in the morning, even though it was the bastardized version where they're like, oh, these lesbians are cousins. They just really are close cousins,
Or I didn't realize until I went to Japan when I was on the Bring It On tour. Wow. And I was I used Sailor Moon as a getting my ear acclimated to Japanese, because I speak enough Japanese that I can kind of get by, but it helps me to just listen to it. So I was watching Sailor Moon and I didn't realize at the end of the first season that they died. I said, excuse me? Everyone's dead? What's happening?
They cut that out.
Cut it out. Cut it all out. And I was my childhood is a lie. My childhood is a lie.
You just said 2 things that I did not know about Sailor Moon. Didn't know that there were lesbians in Sailor Moon, and did not know that they had all died.
Oh my goodness. Sailor Moon. Listen, when you want to talk about gender binary and the varying spectrum, there are literally, okay, here we go. The Sailor Stars, all right?
I'm here.
They come in later, and the US completely cut those episodes out because when they aren't transformed, they look like men. And then when they transform into women. And so there's this whole storyline where Sailor Moon / Usagi and the leader of that group, they kind of fall for each other a little bit, which
Yeah.
I could talk about that whole relationship
Oh, y'all just
and
put me
how
on.
okay. But the
Cause
fact
Oh, it's
l-
good.
it's like she, she's in this like flirty situation because what's his face, Mamoru
Uh-huh.
Tuxedo Mask, he is gone. He went to
Sheridan, for those
America.
who do not know his actual name.
Yeah,
just like,
yeah. And I know I butchered it in my pronunciation, but that's okay, because he's
yeah.
not there. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Seiya is there and he's taking care of her, and then also transforms into Starfighter and she's still taking care of her too. And it's this whole wonderful, like,
Yo.
nobody cares about gender at all. It's fantabulous.
And it's crazy to me because
Yes.
Sailor Moon has existed. When you really think about how long Sailor Moon has existed, it's since the 80s, right? Like when or
1992 or no, the 80s. The manga came out. Yes.
the manga came
Mm.
out in the 80s. So this thing that came out in the 80s, um, that, and during, like, for American culture, at least during like the AIDS crisis and
Yeah.
like all these, like, it's really interesting to see how Japanese culture handles not only the superhero-ness and the magical girl of it all, but like also the gender spectrum of how they handle everything. I
Mhm.
watched how's it go, Oron Host High School, whatever the one
Yes.
yeah. And not to get distracted and talk about that, because I could also talk about that forever, because
Mhm.
I watched it twice because I was like, what's happening? I'm obsessed with
Yeah.
this show. I wish that as progressive as American culture likes to think that it is, it's not even close to what
No.
is happening in a lot of these especially Asian centric, but
Mhm.
Eastern kind of shows. And
Mhm.
oh my god, Sailor Moon all day.
Yeah.
It's
Because Toonami block, that Toonami block of my cartoons as a child was like Dragon Ball Z, and then I
yeah.
watched Sailor Moon or vice versa,
Mhm.
and that was my life for a period of time.
You know what's interesting is that when you first said international superheroes, and I wasn't really sure like what you meant, and when you explained it, and then Sheridan, when you started talking about like, oh, like Sailor Moon and Dragon Ball Z, I definitely watched those cartoons. I watched them, but I don't think I ever thought of them as superheroes for some
Hmm.
strange reason. They weren't superheroes to me. They were like wizards
Just
or
naturally magical
like
beings.
magical
Right.
beings, right? Like it wasn't like, oh, I have these magical powers and I go and I fight crime. It's like,
Mhm.
no, they're just going through like life, and like these kids are at school, and then they're fighting this, in Sailor Moon, they're fighting this like these otherworldly creatures. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know, it just never came off to me that like they were superheroes, but they obviously are. So
And I think that has a lot to do with how we framed, or like American culture has framed
Yeah.
superheroes, because
Yeah.
that
mm,
idea, you think superhero, what do you think? Superman, clean cut
Like,
white
yes.
dude with hair
right.
that doesn't move, and he's like, I'm here to save the day, like
Yeah.
blah 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 blah.
But
Whereas
and then that's All Might in My
mhm,
Hero
yeah,
Academia.
yes, All Might's
Uh,
better than Superman.
for sure. That's just a fact.
Mhm. But what I also love about, and I think this might tie into why you never thought of them as superheroes, is because the tendency with, especially in anime, is that people get these powers and they're like, I don't want this. Like, I was just normal. What's happening? I
Mm.
don't like this. Like, going back to Sailor Moon, she was like, I'm just a 14-year-old girl who likes to eat and oversleeps and does badly in school. And I
Like,
cry a lot
she's
and
so
I'm clumsy.
mediocre.
Yeah, like, you know.
She's so mediocre. There's nothing special about Usagi
Mhm,
before she before everything else
mhm.
happens around her.
Mhm.
Like,
Yep.
typical
And
girl.
exactly. And she isn't, when she becomes Sailor Moon, she isn't immediately like, I'm amazing at everything. No, she
Right.
has to go through it. They
Yeah.
die. Like, everybody dies. Like, she has to go through, she goes through some of the worst stuff,
Mm.
where I can get into PTSD and all that stuff, but like, her character goes through so much,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you get to see her grow into this person who becomes, eternal Sailor Moon.
Right.
She's She believes in everybody and she fights for everybody and she cares about everybody. And even though she's still that clumsy girl who likes to eat, who, likes to sleep and all that stuff, she is also like this super powerful person.
Yeah.
And because you go on that journey, her whole journey is an origin story, like it's very much like you start out and she's this talking cat's like, hey, guess what? Shablam.
I wish.
Right?
I wish a street cat would just come up to me and be like, bam. And I'd be like, okay, let's go.
Right?
I'm ready.
I'm just waiting for my cat. I have a black cat. I'm just waiting for her to be like, yes.
So then
what?
what do you all feel then is the biggest difference? I know there's like physical differences in how even they're drawn,
Right.
superheroes and things in America versus in other countries. Like, since we're talking about anime, what do you think are the biggest differences in how the Asian culture is viewing superheroes versus how we view our superheroes?
Well, I think it changes over the year. It's changed a lot over the years.
Yes.
Like, to start, like Sailor Moon, all the girls are very thin and they're very pretty. They have for the most part, have long hair, aside from like Amy and maybe one or two others, but like of the main squad at least. And so I think, but then you have in My Hero Academia, my brain's not going to remember her name, but there's a superhero that looks like a rabbit, and it's a black girl. And she's voiced by a black girl, and she's strong. That she'll kick you in the face. Like, she's super strong. You can tell like that her arm, like she has those like Patina Miller arms, and you can tell.
I know exactly what you mean.
That specific image.
So specific, but like, they've started to. There's always been the unrealistic expectation of female body type and male body type, of course, but of body type in general, of what you're supposed to attain to be a superhero, or what you naturally have been God-given in order to be a superhero. So I think that it has changed, maybe not as quickly as we all would like for it to, but there are definitely characters that don't fit into the mold. And sometimes those characters are drawn in such a way so that they have something to overcome, and so that they're the underdog. You root for them because you're like, they're not strong. Oh no, you have to believe in them, like Tinkerbell, just like
like, you can do it.
I believe in fairies. I do. Yeah.
Those moments make me cry. Like, where it's like, you could do it, and then they do it, and you're like, oh my god, you did it.
I knew you did it.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud.
People are really My Hero Academia is going to be my main source for this, because it's so directly, it's a world where people have quirks. It's a world where
superheroes and villains.
Superheroes and villains, and people choose their specific paths. You go to hero school, or you're a like kind of middle ground person with a not great quirk, or you're a supervillain of some kind, and or at least like a petty thief.
So everybody kind of had, like, that's what you
not
mean
everybody.
by, like,
not everybody, yeah,
because the main character in My Hero Academia doesn't have a quirk to start off the entire.
And by quirk, do you
series.
mean like power?
Powers,
Yeah, power.
Yeah.
They call them quirks. Because
okay.
sometimes it is just a quirk. Sometimes it's like just a weird thing that someone does, like their finger turns into a spoon. Like,
yeah,
like,
okay, I need to watch this.
It's so good. It's so good.
Really good. It's really good, and
gosh.
it does I think a really great job in explaining and highlighting the American the fascination with superheroes, and just putting like the slice of life high school vibe on top of it. It's kind of like if Peter Parker, but there were a bunch of Peter Parkers,
Right.
and they all went to school to be Peter Parker, or to be Spider-Man, or men and women, etc., people. Because I love to see the high schoolness of it all. Like, they still have to get A's on their tests and do all those things.
They still have crushes and like.
Right.
So there was a movie, I don't know if you all remember, you might have remembered this movie called Sky High back in the day. It was early 2000s. And this sounds like a better version. No shade to Sky High, because I didn't know Sky High. But this sounds like a better version of that.
100%.
A more fully realized version of that. So that's awesome.
Yeah. because the main character, or it's not the main character, I'm thinking, sorry, All Might, is very much like your Captain America, Superman, all of those,
blonde, muscular, got
looks
the
very
stars and
American,
stripes. Yeah.
even though he's Japanese, because his name is Japanese, just to be clear.
Mhm.
But he looks like the epitome of American superhero-dom. He is always, he's a representative, and they make it really clear what hero means to this universe. You are a representation, and you're an ideal for people to strive towards, so that they can feel like everything is going to be okay. So that they can look to you and be like, and feel soothed by your presence, and by your power, and that someone will always be there to catch them if they fall.
Yep, the unbeatable force that they can look
Right.
up to, because that's the whole idea behind All Might too. It's like he's the top hero. Like no one can stop
Number
him.
one.
No one.
They rank all the heroes in the
Mhm.
show, or they like the world ranks heroes by like certain criteria, like people that are really great power, personable, able to do great interviews, like all these like really kind of like things that you would like it feels like a normal desk job, but they're superheroes.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I just thought about the antithesis of this. Have y'all seen The Boys on
Oh, right.
Amazon? It's very much the antithesis of this, where it's similar that everybody looks up to this guy who is perfect and everything they stand for and everything they believe in, but
I watched like 1 or 2 episodes of The Boys, and I got so nervous. I'll get there. I will get there.
Must.
So good.
I know it is,
Yes.
but you guys, I was so nervous. Like when I get nervous, I'm like, I need to stop, and then I stop. So I'll get there, but I started crying because I was like, oh, because that's how I felt about Lovecraft Country, and I was like, I'm so nervous. I need a break, so I took a break, and it's been a while, but I'll get there.
Do it,
Get back into
because
it.
it's what I
know.
think it has been missing from the superhero zeitgeist, if you will, in this country, as far as our culture goes. The way we were talking about anime and how they view superheroes and how they build them with flaws, and maybe there's things that they need to overcome. We don't do that as much outside of these characters' origin stories in our normal superhero stories. And in The Boys, it is like it's constant. You see who these people actually are, and you see them as people. It's really cynical, and I live for it,
It's
because
yes.
Oh no,
we don't
I love
have that in the
Yeah.
superhero genre. We don't have enough.
No,
There is not enough.
but
lot of
then
cynicism.
Watchmen, there's not a lot of it, but then Watchmen, of course.
Yeah.
But oh my God, we're going to talk about all of the like flipping the genre on its head and what that looks like. For sure, that's a whole episode. But yeah, I really, American culture has been so it's shaped so much of other cultures outside of the West, and it's so interesting to see how it develops, how that thought process develops, how they ingest our own material, and so for good or bad. So yeah, I'm trying to think of like other like firm examples, but the magical girl history of just that there's so many others. There's what did I used to watch? Utena,
Which
and
another queer wonderful
100%.
show.
The
Just
magical
like,
girls were really just going for it, weren't they?
they were like, I'll take you, like you're great, like bam bam. Like the amount of like times where like in Sailor Moon they see a really pretty girl, the girls see a really pretty girl, and they're like, oh, she's so pretty, oh my God, I just want to be around her. Like,
Right.
like they blush and they're like, oh my gosh, she's here. Like they just, it's like, yeah, everybody, like sexuality and gender is a spectrum, and we're just going to say that, and that's what it's going to be. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, we have also, when you got me thinking, we have also kind of taken some things or from specifically the Japanese culture when it comes to superheroes. Power Rangers, which is my favorite show, was literally lifted from Super Sentai Warrior, and I think it really shaped what children's superheroes were for a long time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in the 90s, it was all about kids who had a way of turning into a super fighter, you know,
Mm-hmm.
a morpher, a this. Now, a lot of it was also based on being able to sell toys. So we that was like also a very big thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I would say, especially the 90s, you had so many of those types of shows that were um, based off of these shows in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even remember what VR Troopers and The Masked Rider and all of those were based off of, but like that was literally footage from those shows, and it shaped an entire generation of
Mm-hmm.
like kids superheroes. Because
Right.
when I was a kid, outside of like X-Men and like
Yep.
the big names, my favorite superheroes were those, you know, the Power Rangers and the VR Troopers, and like there were so many different types of shows that were just like that. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know, like they were. I think we kind of, while we have, you know, the heavy hitters, so to speak,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
in Marvel and things like that. I think that the um the niche for kids and the kid superheroes and stuff like that was heavily shaped by Japanese culture, especially in the 90s and early 2000s, I would say.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm curious as to why. I'm curious as to why, like just because like I liked it, but I wonder what made execs be like, that's our next thing. But then again, they also brought Wipeout over from Japan eventually. So,
We bring a lot of shows over from
Listen.
Japan, a lot of shows over from the Asian countries in
listen,
general. Like we
Japan
snatch everything.
Japan, when they said, "Hey, Japan, you can't have an army anymore," Japan said, "Okay, so we're just gonna do other things," and they just put a lot of energy into their arts and
Yes.
Technology.
their technology, and it shows.
Yeah.
And also, I think it's not that there is no culture in America. It's that American culture is clearly racist. And so for me, I think it's interesting to have Japanese culture is so steeped in, like, there's so many mythologies. There's so many
Yes.
or Chinese culture, you know,
Yes.
because Dragon Ball Z is technically, it's not Japanese culture. I think that's technically
It's based off of
a
Chinese
Chinese
culture, but
culture,
it's a
right?
Japanese show.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's so many things that you can draw from um that are like ancient and non-copyrighted.
Uh-huh.
um and you can kind of just make it up as you go along, in a way that no one's going to be like, well, that's like Superman. But
Mm-hmm.
I
um,
see. Yeah.
because if you want
Yeah.
to talk about it, Superman's more like Son Goku, that because
Mm-hmm.
that existed first.
Yep.
Like, you know, if you want to talk about an
Mm-hmm.
orphan from a planet that doesn't exist anymore.
Mm.
And so it's the cyclical nature of our borrowing
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm thinking about right now. Is so interesting. Yeah, it's just
Yep.
really interesting.
Yes. It is a cyclical
It's
nature,
cyclical. It
truly.
keeps
Yeah.
happening. And why they're able to keep it so fresh and original is that they have a culture that is thousands of years old to draw upon. They have the
Yeah.
mythology where there isn't really American mythology outside of what Paul Bunyan and
John Henry.
John Henry, my dude, John Henry. That's
Yes.
it. I was doing the hand motion. You got it. Like, that's American mythology,
so
like
lame.
hardworking men.
We so lame.
It is.
It's about production.
It is. It is about production. It's about
Mhm.
people that literally pulled themselves up by bootstraps, or
Mhm.
didn't even have boots and just were just hitting trains and doing
Mhm.
things. But like, but yeah,
American culture is capitalism.
American
Yes.
culture is capitalism at the end of the day, and
You know,
oh,
that's what I loved. I know this is kind of a little off topic, but that's why I love
no,
Lovecraft Country so much, because I
Ugh,
felt like it
yeah.
showed a folklore that felt rooted in American culture, Black culture. Like it felt like it was ours, right? It didn't feel like
Mhm.
it was. I don't know. It didn't like it felt like how I view, like when, you know, when I saw Shang-Chi and I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm like, there's so much folklore Like
Mhm.
in this culture, like it was beautiful to look at, it was beautiful to watch. And I was just like, oh, I wish we had something like that, you know? And
Yep.
when I think about Lovecraft Country, like that was kind of like that culture, that folklore that I don't know, that I
Mhm.
wish we kind of had.
I was gonna say, in our own, like, especially as Black people in America, we do kind of have. I mean, you look at us bringing religions over and disguising it,
Mhm.
and there's this
Mhm.
mysticism that was demonized, so we don't really explore it because the
Right.
only way we're allowed to explore it is like saying like, oh, voodoo's evil, like
Right.
zombies, like like oh, this is bad. Like,
Right.
but like, with with like no research whatsoever, because this is America. You take at everything at face value, and you don't do research because research is bad, and you just believe what people tell you. The end. And
Yes.
so there is a missed opportunity that, who knows, maybe I'll take it up. I'll take up the mantle.
Okay.
Yeah.
But of like all this wonderful folklore and mysticism within African American culture, within Native culture,
Mm.
the people who are actually Americans who were here first and were brutalized, and the fact that our cultures were intertwined during the past because,
Right.
slaves ran away, they run into, a Native tribe, and they're like, these white people, and they're like, I know these white people come come through. And like, so if you look into like hoodoo, it's a mix of African spirituality
Mhm.
and Native spirituality
Mm.
because they found that commonality. They're like, oh, this is, you use these herbs for this too, I too use these herbs to heal this, like.
Mhm.
But nothing really explores that because it's demonized by the capitalist culture that is currently and has been
Right.
forever ruining
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I was thinking what
Mm.
I was saying before was about speaking of Shang-Chi, um I just really appreciated for the most part I've spoken to some East Asian friends since the movie came out, and for the most part they liked it better than Mulan, I'll say that.
Wow.
Okay.
The Mulan remake.
The remake.
But
Yeah.
but I think it did a really good job in the same way that Black Panther, they're doing their best
Mhm.
within the capitalist structure of trying to give us some culture and give
Mhm.
us some cultural specificity and uh bring the legends of other people into the superhero world in a way that Westerners can understand.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated it for that because it was also
Mhm.
just like a really beautiful film to watch, and I love
Mhm.
Michelle Yeoh, so there's that.
I
But
love her so much.
Icon.
she's in like 6 movies this year. I was like,
Mhm.
bitch, did you stop working?
Okay.
Someone
No,
called her someone called her Asian Angela Bassett, and I was like,
I
But
cannot.
that's the most accurate thing I've
you're
heard.
not wrong.
You're
But
not
she has been
wrong.
around forever.
She's been around forever, of course.
I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with her.
Yeah,
I love
but
her
I'm
so
so
much.
happy for her like career glow up because
Yes.
Mhm.
she very much deserves it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that sometimes it's very clear when they've hired the correct people to do these pieces,
Mhm.
Yep.
because sometimes of course we get like really bad versions of these things like Mulan.
Yep. The live
Where
action, once again.
the live
The
action,
live
to be clear.
action. Yes, because the Disney movie was it.
It's lit. It's lit.
It's still lit. I will watch it every day.
Still lit. It's the best
And the
one.
music. And listen, I know it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go on this tangent, but I know it's Donny Osmond singing that song, but
I
that
don't
song
care.
still slaps.
I don't
I'll
know
make a
why
man
BD
out of
Wong.
you.
I don't know why they didn't have BD Wong sing it. That man
I don't
sings.
know. I
That
don't
man
Huh.
know.
sings.
But I'm gonna tell you,
Interesting.
Donny Osmond ate.
Oh, I know
And
he did.
He ate it.
And for what they were for what was happening in the 90s where they were just like fine. Of
Fine.
course these days it would be very different.
Yes.
Yes.
But
Get back to your original I don't think if it was a question, but it's just a
Uh-huh.
topic of discussion. I guess it was the differences between like our how Americans view their superheroes versus other cultures. And I think we've only really talked about anime, but are there any other cultures that have like superheroes that are specific? Like I don't know, like I guess we all
Mhm.
know that most of these superheroes are American, or
Mm-hmm.
they are, if they're not from American, then they come to America first,
They come
right?
to
Yes.
America. Yeah.
Right? So it's like, do we know of I can't even really think of any other superheroes like outside of anime or American culture.
It's
Mm-hmm.
really hard because like I can't speak to like popularity wise,
Yeah.
anime is so popular, so it's so
Yeah.
Right.
easy to be like, because we could talk about Star Wars and then be talk about Star Wars Visions and be like,
Mm-hmm.
look at that.
Mhm.
um
Mhm.
and how George Lucas took a lot from Japanese culture
Yeah.
to make Jedi to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Because Jedi would not exist without you know uh
Samurai.
samurai
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and all the helmets that they have, Darth Vader's helmet
Mm-hmm.
especially, um and the cloaks or like the
Yep.
Right.
robes that they wear and all that stuff, which was very clear in Star Wars Visions. Like they did a like I was like, oh, I knew this, but
Mm-hmm.
you like they clearly drew the parallels so succinctly that I was like, no one could ever doubt this again. Like I'm sure there are still, I always talk about white fanboys, sorry white fanboys if you're listening to this, but white fanboys who are like, no, it's not like that, even though you could go to a Star Wars museum and it'd be like, George Lucas based it off of blah, 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 blah,
Mm-hmm.
blah. And they'll still be like, no, it's not. George Lucas is just a genius, it came from his mind. And I'm like, relax.
No.
Okay.
Calm down.
But I guess like I'll kind of pivot thinking about Star Wars, but it's interesting in the realm of Star Wars because there's so many worlds in Star Wars, how they use different international dialects or voices
Mm-hmm.
to uh represent certain peoples. Like all the amphibians in Star Wars are Caribbean
Mm-hmm.
in some way, shape, or form. George Lucas decided that. He was like, they're all Caribbean. And
Oh.
that's how like obviously Jar Jar, and the Gungans, and then you have Kit Fisto, played by Phil Lamar, again
Mhm.
another Jamaican-esque
Mm-hmm.
Caribbean accent. Um, yeah, I find it interesting because so much of American culture is still shaped by white men.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. I'm just curious, like what would the world be like if other people had been involved at a higher
Mhm.
level? Would they have been like, no,
Mm-hmm.
Right.
don't do that,
Mm-hmm.
or could at least there have been some more clear cultural specificity. I always say cultural specificity, if you make it more and more
Yep.
specific instead of just being like, well, you're from the water, so the water's the Caribbean and Caribbean, like that's it.
Avatar: The Last Airbender does this beautifully.
Sure.
Mm.
Yes, the TV show,
The TV
because
show. Yeah.
they're like, if you, and I'm a huge nut on this show as well, because it's like the Air Nation tribes are based on Tibetan
Right, months,
culture,
yeah.
the water tribes are based on Inuit, and the Inuit are, I know there's a more proper word, but I'm just gonna say Inuit and native tribes in
Indigenous.
indigenous.
Is
Yes.
that
Well,
maybe?
I
No,
think
I think Inuit
is the
the
proper word.
yes.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Because
E
it's a
word is the word we
specific.
don't say.
Yes. So the Inuit tribes, and then the Fire Nation, very much Chinese
Mhm.
culture, and the Earth Kingdom as well, like different aspects of those cultures. So they're very
Mhm.
specific with it. They're like their
Right.
bending forms are based on real martial arts forms, and they're like, here's this. She bends differently, so this is based on this. Like they are two white dudes who did their research, and they were
Who
like, we're
did their
going to.
research?
Mhm,
Mhm.
and they brought in the right people, the right animators, they watched the right things, and that's why their world is so full. They're like, these are nations in a fantasy world representative of real things, of
Mm.
real people,
Yeah.
of real cultures.
I think that's been my problem in the past sometimes when it comes to superhero, American superhero stuff, is that the worlds don't feel full. They feel very surface level, or they don't address certain things. And I'm like, but how can you ignore that? I don't understand how you can ignore that in the greater context of what you're trying to prove, whatever your character, your superhero represents. And I know it's getting better. I loved Eternals, and I know we can't talk in depth about it, but like I loved Eternals because this doesn't give anything away. But all of the Eternals, or most of them at least, all have names that are based in ancient mythology. They're all characters that we know. They're all like Gilgamesh, like anybody who studied Mesopotamia in 5th grade or whenever that was. So you have Gilgamesh, you have Athena, and you're like, but Athena's a Greek god. And they're like, just kidding, it's an Eternal.
Just kidding.
And I loved, that's the reason why I loved that movie so much, because even though there were all these characters that I was like, who? There's so many of them, but I knew them. I felt like somewhere in my gut, like I felt like I knew them. So it allowed them to explore all these so many various things that other movies have not been able, or other movies to that extent have not been able to explore in the same way. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm excited for the future. I mean, I hate DC. I'm so sorry. I love DC, but I hate the DC extended universe. But I'm very excited, at least for Marvel and some of the TV shows that are coming out, and how they are getting the right people involved from the beginning to tell complete stories that have a rich life, that you can cling to any part of them and be like, oh, that's me, or oh, I understand this because it's representative of yada 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 yada, and it doesn't feel forced, or it doesn't feel, you know, all the people that bombed the Eternals and were like social justice, and I was like, get out of here with your nonsense. I don't have time for it.
Get over yourself. Just get over yourself.
I think that's what I loved so much about Falcon and Winter Soldier, even though I fully admit I was not super excited about it when I heard it was announced. I was just like, oh, okay, you know. But watching it and listening to, first, especially listening to the dialogue, it felt so Black. It felt us. It felt like, oh, there are Black people in the writing room, and you can tell because of the dialogue. And it just, I was like, wow, like it is jarring. And then now it's just like, oh, what have I really been listening to? You know, we were so accustomed to listening to how it's been written for so long, and to actually have Black people in the writing room and be able to bring that out, and for it to be so noticeable. At least to me, I was just like, wow, this is so different. And it just made me love the show even more.
That's the same thing too with Black Panther. Like, we saw that movie. I was like, black. Like, you know,
I was like, oh, we in Compton.
You know, it's just so good. Like, you know, colonizer. Like, I was like, that is so good. This is so good. Like, I left there thinking, if only we had if nobody had come over and we were all there and everything, it would be Wakanda right now. Like, you know, if nobody had messed up everything and pillaged it for resources and destroyed everything. And, you know, I'm not going to get into that.
Well, but not getting into that exactly, but like the way that the American colonialist mindset kind of just infects so many things. And people, there's a difference between people thinking they're entitled to do something and people who feel a calling to do something. And so we've been talking on and off about Lovecraft Country, but like the guy who wrote Lovecraft Country was white. Like straight, like all day, every day white. And every time I think about that, I'm like, what?
Right? Because it feels like how?
But it's wild, crazy.
Wild.
And he wrote it. I think that speaks to that, and then Avatar and so many other things can speak to the possibility that the possibilities that are endless if we got out of our own little bubbles and saw what else the world had to offer. The world has to offer so much to our stories and to us and how we develop and how we see the world. And these people, especially white people, going outside of themselves to write these stories and write them with such great care, that they still are like in the hearts of people to this day, is a really big deal. It's like a really huge deal, because there are tons of white people on record who are like, well, I'm not a Black person, so I don't think that I can write to speak to the situation that people would like me to. That's why I don't write Black characters. Or Tim Burton, which I can't even get to Tim Burton. Tim Burton makes me so sad. Anyway, I can't. But yeah, that's why I think that's why I love the way that anime has or American culture has shaped anime, how anime has shaped American culture and just gone back and forth. I'm sure there are so many other international superheroes. They're just not popular in the popular culture. If you guys know of any international superheroes that we just haven't spoke of, please feel free to comment below. Come to our IG and talk to us about it. Don't forget to follow us at Supa Black Podcast on IG and on Twitter at Supa Podcast. Let us know your thoughts. I'm going to let the rest of the crew take us out.
Well, once again, I'm Sheridan. You can follow me if you're interested in vegan food at Island Zephyr Cooks on IG. We say IG now. Pleasure chatting with you.
And I am Jason Williams, he, him pronouns. You can find me on Instagram, IG, at Blue Ranger 83.
And my name, as always, is Zuri Washington, she, her pronouns. You can follow me at Zuri with a fringe on top. Don't forget to follow the podcast. I will repeat ad nauseum at Supa Black Podcast on IG or at Twitter. Or on Twitter. I always say at Twitter. That's not what you're supposed to say. On
it's
Twitter.
Like the at sign. So.
I know there's like the at sign, and then my eyes get confused. But follow us on Twitter at Supa Podcast. And as always, don't forget, should you need heroes, we've got your back. We fear no topic we attack. If conversation is what you lack, you'll find it here with Supa Black. Bye, guys.